Welcome all. We have a great session today and look forward to a promising outcome as we go forward in this new year. Just some objectives and expectations. COO Executives in Transition is designed to support Chief Operating Officers and in these uncertain and challenging business times, getting COOs in transition on your way to your next great opportunity. Open to COO Forum members as well as any Chief Operating Officer or second in command executive. Pro bono, absolutely no fee or obligation. This initiative aligns with the Chief Operating Officer Business Forum Inc. COO Forum core values and is expressly intended for Chief Operating Officers and second in command executives. We are beginning our 7th month, and we're very pleased with the progress, and we're looking forward to more. We are still looking to expand initiatives and look forward to those coming forward as they come forward. In terms of the guidelines, these are just helpful for the meeting. First off, meeting courtesy. It's very helpful if everybody will mute when they're not speaking, and most people aren't speaking, so mute. And then we're business first, so if you have to get up, if the dog drops by, none of these things are big deals. This is just we're a relaxed, casual group, and you can go down and get some water or whatever you want to do. Business language, no politics. It just works better. That's all. Meeting recorded. We are recording this, and as we have all of our sessions, and they will be in the Mighty Network. So we are continuing to archive our initiative as well. I have a few people to introduce. First off, Laura Weichel is our second in command, 13 years, executive vice president, responsible for chapters and organizational issues. She is the true second in command for the COO Forum. Fiona Murray is fairly new in member services, and she's really anchoring the COO in transition. She's doing a fabulous job. We would not be able to do all the things we're doing without Fiona. She's been unbelievably significant, and we're delighted she's with the team. I'd like to introduce Scott Bohannon, Korn Ferry, Head of Career Transition Services, formerly CEO at Achieve Forum and Infotech Research Group, 20 plus years in leadership development, proud father of Ann Ellis and Woodley. Scott received an MA and PhD in economics as well as a JD from the University of Virginia. He received a BA summa cum laude in public policy from Centre College. Welcome, Scott, to COO Executives in Transition. It's all yours.
Thanks, Bill, and thank you also to Laura and Fiona for all the work that they've done to make joining you all today quite easy. So, and thanks to everybody else for giving me some of your time. I know it's hard to come by. It's about the most valuable resource most of us have, so I appreciate having some time to share with you what we've been learning at Korn Ferry about COOs in the job market these days. One of the things I'll note before I dig in anywhere is that this is, as you'll see, not my background. This is not the world I come from. One of the most horrific things for me has been realizing that I desperately need to rewind the tape on the last 30 years of my career and redo pretty much every job search and interview that I've ever conducted, now that I understand what's happening in the process. It's very humbling, let me put it that way. So hopefully some of what I can share today, others may be able to share during our conversation will help shortcut some of that along the way. This is the page for my mom, as I like to say. The reason why I've got it here is because I wanted to make sure you understood where I was coming from. I'm an operator. I run things, I make things, I deliver things. I'm not a search professional. Korn Ferry is known for search, but that's not my background. And right now I spend my time focused on helping people find jobs when companies hire us because they've laid people off. That's not all that I'm focused on, but that's the biggest part of it. So I'm spending a lot of time helping people at all levels of organizations find a job in a very unusual market. And in particular, I do a lot of the coaching for our C-suite executives at large enterprises and mid-sized enterprises. So helping them, people who are your peers, navigate what is a very unusual environment. So I think what you'll see is the fact that because I'm not a search person sitting at a search firm, that the way I talk about things is going to be a little bit different. I tend to be sitting with the person who's looking, not the person who's hiring, but I spend a lot of time talking to the folks who, in fact, are doing that hiring that's out there. So with that little bit of background, I'll promise to stop talking about myself. As I mentioned, Korn Ferry, we do a lot of search. So typical year, this year will be no different. We'll place about 6,000 executives in large enterprises and many, many, many more searches than that. But just in the C-suite, this is what we will place this year. And what that means is we have a good sense of what companies are looking for in candidates. And we're usually the first screen, right? We're the people who decides who's going to get through to talk to anybody at the organization. And in some ways that may even be more important than understanding what the companies are looking for. It's understanding what may keep you from getting the opportunity to start talking about that job in the first place. Now I'm going to focus on what I share in my comments here on things you're not going to probably read online. You can get all that yourself. I'm going to focus on just things that are kind of more the inside baseball, the unique insights that we pull out because of this process that we're going through. And that's where I'm going to start with one of those right now. As I said, I'm not a search professional. That's not the world I grew up in. And moving into a company that does a lot of it has been quite eye-opening for me personally. So my impression was back in the day when, I was a general manager and running a business unit was, hey, all these search firms would want to talk to me, right? They're looking to fill people in these kinds of roles. I'm somebody who's done this. Of course they'd want to talk to me. And by and large, they just don't. And now I understand why after coming inside. So the search business, by and large, is a research business, right? The search business is out looking for candidates that they think would be good to fill a role. And their primary interest at most search organizations is in people who are passive candidates, right? So they're spending a ton of time out looking at people who have experience or sitting in roles that they think would be good candidates for the job, the positions they need to fill, but are not people who are actively searching for jobs, right? Now, it's I would say a weird historic bias in the system that they don't want active job seekers for the most part. And there are notable exceptions. There are search people out there who are just as interested in somebody who's searching for a job as not. But by and large, if you're looking for a job, they're not particularly interested in talking to you. Right? Not unless it comes through a referral or you're a personal friend. And so there's a kind of a weird breakdown in that process for people. We get thousands of inbound inquiries a day by job seekers, and they usually don't go anywhere, to be honest, because they've already failed to meet the first criteria, which is, are they not looking for a job? So if you're gonna find a role in an active search that's being conducted by a search firm, the probability is that you're going to end up coming to that company through another route. So to be clear, I'm not saying that if there's a search firm that's looking for a candidate that you can't get that job. What I am saying is you're not going to get there through the search partner for the most part. You're going to get there through other means, as we'll talk about. And also just understand, if you go and you fill out a form on one of the major search firms' websites, or you send them an email, or you call them and they don't call you back, it doesn't actually reflect anything about you other than the fact that you were looking for potential jobs and therefore you've been screened out of the process right off the bat. I think it kind of makes us look like jerks, if I'm being honest, in the space. And I'm trying to change some things about that but the issue is the search people are overrun with inbound inquiries. Right? One of the guys I was working with the other day is getting about 240, 250 inbound inquiries a day of people who want to talk to him about finance positions, right? There's just no way that he can thoughtfully reply to all of those folks and handle it particularly well. So again, before I leave this, what I wanted to make sure was clear is that it looks like from the outside, of course, they'd want to talk to you, right? Korn, Ferry, and others are looking to place COOs. You're a COO, you've got this experience. So of course, we'd want to sit down and have a conversation with you. But the search business is largely built around looking for passive candidates, not engaging active job seekers. And so you may find a lot of silence that feels puzzling or worse. But that has to do with how the business itself actually works. And it doesn't reflect in any way, shape, or form your qualifications for the jobs that the search firms are actually running. So let me pause there, because that may or may not be news to folks on the call, a little bit about how this process usually works. But I thought I'd see if anybody had any questions or any personal experiences in dealing with the search world in that regard.
I'll weigh in. Can you hear me?
Sure can.
Okay. Hi, I'm Paige Nessis, and I'm fortunate enough at the moment to be in a position where I am a passive candidate. But these sessions are incredibly helpful because my company is being acquired. So there's a point soon where I might end up being an active candidate. I don't really have a question as much as what do we do with that information, right? Because essentially, if I heard correctly, you're saying that reaching out to a search firm is not actually going to necessarily make a difference because they get so many inbounds that they're not really necessarily going to respond to you. So what do you do with that information, and how do you maybe change your approach so that in the situation where you're an active candidate, they don't dismiss you to the side, or if you're a passive candidate, you still get some attention from them?
Mm-hmm. So yeah, there is a weird timing issue in it, right? The interesting thing on the search side is when they're reaching out to passive candidates tend to say, "Don't bother me right now." Right? Like, I don't want to talk to you. I'm busy. I got things to do, right? Yet that's when you're of greatest interest to the search professionals, right? So the first thing, that I would say is everybody that I know underinvests in managing their career. It's almost like we're not supposed to. It's somehow disloyal or whatnot. Nothing could be further from the truth. You should be always actively managing your career. Your resume, your LinkedIn profile should reflect where you are today and what the world is looking for. And you should be cultivating at least a couple of friends who are executive search folks, right? And so the outreach isn't, I'm looking for a job. The outreach is, I want to be managing my career. I want to be doing this better. And you've either been recommended by a friend, or you're a friend of a friend, or I've read about you and you seem interesting. And I'd love to cultivate a relationship with you. They understand that, right? That fits the parameters quite nicely. In the long run, it makes their lives easier, right? Because there's nothing urgent. You can work through building a relationship. You may then become a very good candidate for a role that lands on their desk that they do need to fill. So what I'd say is, number one, you do want to invest in career management no matter what of your own. Second, you should have at least 2 executive search professionals with whom you've built a relationship that are meant to have nothing to do with the moment in time that you're in, but across the balance of your career. And the trick often can be, of course, well, who really should those couple of people be? And when we get to networking, what I'd say is, when we talk about that, executive search professionals are a very powerful part of your network, right? And so that's where I would focus. I would focus on building a couple relationships around long-term career management when you're in passive mode.
Thank you.
Something I did not do myself, I would like to add, and figured that my college roommate, who was now an executive search professional in New York, would just sort everything out for me the time I started looking for a job, and found out that wasn't the way it worked at all. So, yeah. So that's where I would start now. And by the way, what I will say is, if you're usually as part of an acquisition, if your positions are eliminated, which is often the case with senior teams, right? Unfortunately, you're kind of an in-betweener. You're not treated as much as a active job seeker, but not fully as a passive either, because the lens around why you lost your job is different. They're not wondering why you lost your job, if there's an unknown story that's there, these kinds of things, right? The reason why historically people have favored passive candidates is there's always concern about, is there something I don't know about the active job seeker that's going to blow up in my face as part of this search? And I think what's important to understand about the search professionals, particularly for C-level, they've often nurtured these relationships with their clients across their whole career, right? So they're very protective of who they're going to bring in when they've spent 30 years building a relationship with that CEO or that head of HR, right? So there's an understandable level of risk aversion, and you present less risk if there's been a layoff because of an acquisition than you do if you're just, call it, suddenly in the market, so to speak. So I saw a question in the chat about how we use a BlueSteps database of executives. I have no idea, is the short answer. I'm not on the search side, so I don't understand the day-to-day mechanics of what they do and how they do it. It's a bit of a black box to me. So I don't have that visibility, but I'd be happy if you shoot me an email or something to follow up and let you know what we do on that front. So another question I saw from Laura about how's an interim C-suite role viewed by executive recruiters. This is becoming more and more popular right now. So we have a growing business around placing people in interim roles. And some of that has nothing to do with the pandemic whatsoever. It started well before. There is a significant demand for people in interim roles these days. And, the gaps on resumes are more concerning to most search professionals than employed periods of time. The question will be, what's the story? What's the story that you're telling about the time that you were in an interim role around that? But again, there's lots of reasons why people will be in them. The longer you've been in a role, the more passive you look, the more natural you look to a search professional, right? That's in there. So again, to be clear, this isn't about every search professional, right? And how they're going to proceed it. I mean, some of the best opportunities that have landed for people that I've been supporting have come from our search team. It is, again, just about making sure you understand from the outside something that can feel very discouraging as you come in, is if you bounce off of the Korn Ferrys and the Spencer Stewarts and others in that process, and what you might need to do to come back in from another angle. Let me skip forward to the next slide, which is another reason to avoid discouragement in this. Executive level folks, it takes about 9 months to find a job on average in good times, right? It's a long journey, and it can be emotionally very difficult for people. We find that particularly if your position's been eliminated or you've been laid off, there's a lot of emotion early in that process that is difficult to work through. And and it is something that needs to be worked through. Secondly, it becomes emotional again later on, particularly about month 4 or 5 for executives, because um, it, it's not even exactly rejection in most cases. It's more just that there are not a lot of opportunities often presenting, right? And so the first thing I wanted to just make sure I noted here was, if you're at month 6, 7, 8, 9, et cetera, that's normal in the job search process for an executive. You're not experiencing something unique to you. And I realize that's an intellectual explanation of an emotional situation, but again, that's the average, which means, close to half the people, it's taking longer to find a job than 9 months at the executive level. So you're in for a marathon, usually if you're searching for a job as an executive. And it helps to remind yourself of that this is normal. And you shouldn't be discouraged by how long it's taking, because these kinds of jobs are more like shooting a bullet with a bullet than they are when you're at a much lower level in the organization. And there are a lot of roles that look like the ones that you're looking for. I'd love to give you stats on how long it's taking during the pandemic, but the problem is it's not old enough for us to give you a lot of stats about how it's looking in the pandemic, because we're just hitting really the year mark where it's affected people. But when you look at the timing of where executives' positions have been eliminated during the pandemic, most of them are just now approaching the 9-month mark. So almost by definition, anybody who's lost their job in an executive role during the pandemic hasn't had long enough for us to reset what the metrics look like. Anecdotally, it's both a harder and better market, So I don't know the numbers are going to look any different on the other side of it. So I think this is the most important point that I would leave you with based on what we've seen, which is I've been talking about executives in general, but the COO role is different than the rest of the roles in the C-suite. I'm probably telling you things you're well aware of, but what we find is usually the COO position has been created because the CEO has a particular need, right? They need a span breaker, or they need somebody who can focus on getting costs under control, restructuring processes, driving a digital transformation. There's a long list of reasons why CEOs end up creating the COO position. But it's unique, right? It's unlike chief marketing officers and B2B companies who, have a high degree of similarity in what they do, right? Or CFOs and so on. We don't see that with the COO role. Every portfolio tends to look pretty unique, and it tends to be very personality driven by the CEO specifically. And so it's very different to be talking about being in a COO role out looking for a job. And so what we find for the individual is that the most likely scenario is that a role will be created for you. It won't be a box that's open on the org chart right now that they're trying to fill. It won't be, here's a COO role. We're talking to COO roles about filling it. Those are there. They do happen. Don't get me wrong. But the odds are that it's more about ending up talking to somebody who realizes that there is an opportunity to take advantage of your skill sets, experiences, and perspectives, and to bring that in to solve a set of challenges that they have at their organization, right? Let me pause there again and just see whether or not you all have lived this. It's fine. I'm describing it from the outside, but has this been consistent with your own experience and how you all have landed in COO roles?
Hi, I'll go ahead and comment. Andy Trestrail here. Yeah, absolutely. The past two COO roles that I had, those opportunities were created for me, and they took some time to develop. One in particular took about 9 months, pretty close, to develop out fully and actually happen. The other one happened a little bit faster, but that was because the owner of the company was in a situation where they really needed a lot of help. But yes, absolutely. And created custom, and we're based on relationships.
Thanks, Andy. So let me talk about a couple implications then of what Andy just described, because it does affect the job search for a COO quite significantly. Now, I'm not saying I wouldn't give the same guidance based on what I've seen to others. It's that it magnifies the importance of those strategies, if you will, in the case. So let me move us ahead here. Now, I kind of hate this one, if I'm being honest with you. In every executive that I have ever talked to who has a coach that's helping them in the job hunting process says something to me at some point, like, if somebody tells me one more time that I need to network, I'm going to strangle them, right? Like it's just constantly about the need to network. The reason for that is statistics. Depending on what you're looking at, roughly 2/3 of jobs end up coming out of your professional network, right? And we get most of our jobs via people we've worked with before in some fashion. Now, it may not be at the same organization. It could be customer and client or whatever the case is. But this is where people in executive positions find their jobs. It's generally true of other professionals, but it's particularly acute when we're looking in the executive ranks, right? And if you back up and think about it, in general, it makes sense, right? We're a lot more comfortable hiring somebody that either we've worked with or that has worked closely with somebody we trust, right? When you look at the COO roles, the fact that the role is very likely to be created for you dramatically increases the importance of networking. I can't tell you the percentage increase on this, but it is, by all anecdotes, it is a bigger need, if you will, with COO roles than it is for any other role in the executive suite, right? Your opportunities to have those roles created for you are going to crop up because you're talking to somebody who is sharing a need, and you're creating, the two of you are in effect identifying together what it is that you could be doing for them, right? And the only way that luck, that fortuity, that serendipity is going to happen is if we're talking to more folks, right? If we're having more conversations that are out there. Now, my last two roles were CEO roles of kind of smaller companies. Both of those opportunities came out of networking, right? They didn't come out of any kind of normal search process. They didn't kind of come out of me applying for an open post. They came out of somebody saying, wait a second, what you're talking about is an issue we're dealing with, right? Let's pick up that conversation. So statistically speaking, networking, it is the game. Secondly, in a COO role, because the job is going to be created for you, networking is even more important, right, in this process than it is for other folks. And if you are working with a coach or somebody else, they're going to keep pushing you on networking because they know it's the hardest part of this process to maintain, right? Getting your resume up to date, updating it for your next interview, your LinkedIn profile, these kinds of things don't require diligence on an ongoing basis. You kind of get them under control and then it's pretty good. But networking is one we lose steam on, right? And so you will find if people around you are looking after you, they're going to keep pushing you on the networking issue, right? Because of its importance. Now, one of the things that I hear consistently from folks at every level is, well, wait a second, like, what am I really supposed to do? Right? What does it really mean to go out and to network effectively? And I find most of the stuff you read about it isn't very helpful. Most people aren't good at it, and the guidance around it tends to be not so great. So let me share with you what we've seen work. Now, a couple of you might recognize the guy in the middle. It's Tony Williams, former mayor of Washington, D.C. He's the one who got us out of bankruptcy, not the one who went to prison, just to be clear about that. The story's a lot more relevant as a result. The reason why I put Tony up here is he's one of the best networkers I've ever met. The guy's not a politician at all. He just saved the nation's capital at a real moment of need. But what he is, he's constantly networking, right? He never stops. And the main thing Tony does for folks is he's helping them network. So whenever you're meeting with Tony, he's suddenly saying, oh, you know what? You need to talk to such and such. I need to introduce you to this person, right? And in fact, he often goes further. He'll often show up with you to the first meeting you have with that person. It'll be the three of you meeting with whoever it is. But he invests very heavily in making connections. Now, every time I've ever known that Tony's had a need in his life, other people show up to help Tony without Tony even asking, because he's constantly connecting them with people and helping. So the first thing I'd say is, if you don't know what else to do when it comes to networking, do what Tony does, which is when you're meeting with somebody, be thinking through, who can I connect them with that's going to be valuable to them now or in the future, or that they might just find fascinating, right? So, I'd say in networking, your greatest asset is the people you already know, the people in your network that you can put other people in touch with. That's going to do a couple things. One, it gives value, right? Obviously, right off the bat. The second thing is it naturally sets up other people to then do the same for you. And the primary goal of networking is more networking, right? So it is to talk to somebody. It's not that they're going to give you a job offer, right? It's not that they're going to go craft that role for you. They might, but your primary objective is for them to put you in touch with the next person or people that you should also be talking to. So we're using the network to keep building the network so that we'll have a greater chance of that serendipity happening where that job gets created for us or we're a fit for what they're looking for. So goal, more networking. That's what you're networking for, is to get more networking. Second thing, you got to create value for them. Obviously, I'm not following the order of my numbers here. The second thing is you need to create value for them, though. And the easiest, most reliable way to do that is to help them network, to put them in touch with other people that are out there. Now, you can do other things, like you can provide them with information that you may have. We were talking before the call started today about some research out of Stanford about Zoom fatigue and things like that. Something as small as that for somebody who's saying, like, I'm having a hard time engaging my people on Zoom calls right now. People are talking about being tired more. Whatever. Oh my gosh, well, did you see this article? Let me send you that, right? Let me point you to something else that I saw that I read that's helpful to me right now. Small little efforts like that, that you create some value for the person, end up mattering, right? So looking for that thing that you read, the thing that you saw, the thing that you wrote, whatever that can actually be a bit helpful to them. It doesn't have to be huge, but just even in a small way is also a good way to create some value. And sometimes you can actually do something for them, right? There are times that, again, I'm not saying go become a free consultant, right? But there are moments that you can do something where you have a capability of some kind that you can quickly take care of something. So, one of the things I do a lot of, strangely still, is I do a fair amount of macro building in Excel after all these years. It's surprising how often for people I can be like, oh, wait, I can automate that for you. I'll send you a little spreadsheet. I'll tell you how to use it really quick. And people are thrilled because they end up saving a little bit of time, right? Whatever your little thing is, the thing you can do on the side, find a way to give them some value, because if you're giving them value, right, it's easier to ask for value in return. And if you're in the more passive phase still, right, it's a chance to nurture those relationships for when you're going to need them for different purposes, when you're in a more active mode that's out there. The third thing that I listed here to me is a really big one, which is ask for advice, right? Ask for advice. It's amazing how much that matters. I tell a lot of the young people that I work with when they're trying to get in the door with somebody, I'm like, well, have you called and asked them for advice? And they're like, I'm trying to sell them a product. What do you mean call and ask them for advice? And I'm like, well, nobody wants to take your sales call. But it's amazing how quickly they'll sit down and have coffee with you for to give you some career advice, right? And the reason I think we forget is it honors people. People feel very honored by the request for advice, if it's really advice. If it's really tell me how I could position my product better for you to buy it, that's not what I mean by advice, right? By advice, I mean about, things that are important that demonstrate a respect for them as a professional and a human being. And so interestingly, that is a very strong play in networking as well, is to ask for advice, because interestingly, people perceive that as creating value for them in that they feel honored. So 3 things to think about in your networking to get started. I should have written it as goal 1: find more people to network with. That's your biggest win out of it. Make sure you're giving them value in some of these ways, and get their advice. And by the way, it's funny, when you ask for advice, that's often the moment they say, you know what, you should talk to Sue. She's got something interesting happening here, and they need that nudge to get over the line to say, I know somebody you should talk to in this situation. A couple other things I'll mention on the left on networking, and then I'll shut up and see if folks have got some other questions about it, whatever. I'm going to mention the part at the bottom. And this may seem strange, but you need to run your networking like a marketing campaign. There's some very basic things you can do. If you've been on LinkedIn historically, you can use the privacy features, for example, to download all your contacts on LinkedIn. And so where people have included their email addresses and things like that, you'll be able to get your contacts' email addresses into an Excel spreadsheet. And then you need to dump them in out of your own contacts. And then you need to go use something like HubSpot and start running the process like a marketing campaign. If you don't know how to use HubSpot or something similar, they're easy. It's a good skill to learn in life anyway these days. But it takes a lot of labor to go out and actually manage the outbound contact. You need to get your big list of potential contacts together. You need to triage them into the people you think are the most important to engage with in a very tailored fashion, the people that you want to just make contact with because you never know, and the people that you need to avoid. You shouldn't be reaching out to, right? You need to get them triaged, and then you need to manage them accordingly. I usually also recommend you set up a separate Gmail account to do all this, right? And you need to go through and run it just like you would a marketing campaign, regular outreaches, managing the inbound responses, tailoring your messages. But if you try to do that just all out of your normal inbox, it's overwhelming and exhausting. But if you use a tool like HubSpot, you can make it far more manageable. It's still going to take you a lot of time, but it's going to take a lot less time than it would otherwise. If you're lucky enough to have access to like an assistant or a correspondent still, obviously they can be really helpful, but encourage them to do the same thing because it'll be more efficient use of their time. They'll be able to get more done for you. So just a bit about networking. Again, what we've seen work for people in this space and some ways to make it easier. Some other implications for the COO here in a second, but again, let me stop and just see if anybody has any questions or thoughts about the networking space.
Hi, Scott, it's Paige again. Um, I have a possibly a strange question, but my current company has like drilled into our head about privacy and security. And so when somebody sends me a connection request through LinkedIn, unless I know them personally, I don't accept it. But there are people, for example, on this call that afterwards will reach out and say, hey, I saw you on the call. Let's connect on LinkedIn. Is there a downside to just having all of these people in my LinkedIn network?
No, absolutely not. This is not a sales pitch for LinkedIn in any way, shape, or form, but and there's a lot of stuff that happens on LinkedIn these days I wish didn't, but it is just incredibly powerful as a tool for not just for networking of this kind, but in general in business these days. I have a, first assume positive intent from every outreach and accept them. I don't care who they are. I have some really interesting friends these days around the world as a result. And I end up undoing a number of them over time because, it's just, they're never going to do anything but send me a sales pitch. Although I've hired some of my best salespeople off of people trying to sell me things on LinkedIn, right? So again, I would encourage using it. It's pretty ubiquitous these days. And over time, it makes a lot of this a lot easier.
So limited downside and greater potential upside, right?
Yeah.
And the worst case, usually neutral.
Yeah. I think that's
Thank you.
Fair. Yeah, no problem. I wish I'd invented LinkedIn.
There are lots of things we all wish we would have invented, right? That's on the list. Zoom, that's on the list.
Yeah, boy, these days, is it not ever? So, yeah, they've become a verb. You've made it when you've become a verb. And so those are big moments. Well, let me talk about the second thing that's a big implication off of the fact that the job is likely to be created for you. So I see a lot of resumes. A friend of mine is a retired admiral, and when he was getting ready to leave the military, he asked me if I would read his resume, which had already gone through a lot of programs and things to make it better. And I was like, absolutely. I read it and I was overwhelmed by my lack of accomplishment in my life and reading his resume with what he'd done and what he'd accomplished and whatever. But it still could have been a better resume, right? So, and the big thing that was missing in that, and I find in lots of other conversations, is what we tend to share with people is what we've done, right? And that's natural. Resumes look like a kind of a report of what we've done. Here's what I've done, right? But people are only interested in what you've done because it is proof of what you could do. Right. And that's an obvious point, but I think very overlooked. And so this is Da Vinci's letter to the Duke of Milan, which is one of my favorites out there. And I only put a couple examples up from it. Right. This is his letter saying why the Duke of Milan should hire him, should bring him to his court. Right. And, and if the fight should be at sea, I have the kinds of many machines most efficient for offense and defense and vessels, which will resist the attack of the largest guns and powder and fumes. Right. And he keeps going through these things. And you're like, well, who doesn't want to hire Da Vinci? Like, now the interesting thing is Da Vinci hadn't actually done anything that's in the letter. Right. That's not what was in the letter. It wasn't, I've done these things. It was because of the things I've done, I can do these things. Right. And that's the interesting part. And when you're thinking about the fact that somebody is going to create a job for you, that's most likely your next role. The interesting thing is, what can you do for them? It's not, that you ran a major cost transformation effort, right? It is that you have identified, or you can identify for them, ways where they've introduced unnecessarily complexity into their systems, and how you can identify that through the customization of their IT systems and so on, right? It's explaining what you can do for them that piques their interest. what we find is you're asking a lot, particularly in a networking conversation, to have somebody bridge the gap between your experience and how it could be applied in their context, right? It happens, it happens a lot, but a whole lot more is missed. And so this is the place where you really advocate for yourself. It's not, look what a great job I did. It is, this is what I can do for you, right? That is the safe brag in the space, because I want to hear that, right? That is something I want to hear. I want to hear what you can do for me, right? And what's going to make a difference, because that's when I start thinking about, yeah, this is not hard for me to justify creating that position now, because you're going to come in and solve a huge problem or set of problems for me that I face today. So what I'd say is go back, look at your resume and articulate to your dog, your spouse, to somebody, what it is you can do for someone, and get good at doing that, not simply recounting the accomplishments that you have had previously.
Hey, Scott, it's Andy. I was hoping you were going to bring up the resume, because I apologize if this is going out too far, but I was going to make the ask. You've seen a lot of resumes over the years. I don't know how many countless versions of my resume. I've had people tell me I need to restructure it, rewrite it, do this. I've had experts write it, and you know, I've done that before. Do you have a resume that you can share with the team that you think is one of the best structured resumes you've ever seen? That's my answer.
Yeah, I mean, here's what I'll actually do. I'm not going to show you the one that I think is best. I'll ask some of my colleagues who screen them what they think is the best, right? 'Cause I'm not the screen, right? So I'll ask some of my colleagues for one that they would recommend as a good model. What I will say is, you know, we're finding, I mean, we have a conversation about whether or not the resume is just a silly relic of the past, right? I mean, does it even make sense these days? And the answer is, it emphatically makes a difference, because people expect you to have one. so
No.
Yeah, it totally matters. But we're finding a lot more tolerance for at the executive level for variation. There's not a right way to do an executive resume these days in the way that I think there has been in the past. If your application, if you're more junior and you're going to end up in an applicant tracking system and the algorithms are going to read your resume and maybe filter you out, then okay, there's some significant issues there. But for executives, usually it starts with humans, not with machines. So there's a lot more room. But I will be happy to share across. And I know there's some other folks on the call here who may have some great examples as well, but I'll ask our search folks what they think are some of the stellar examples. And I'll make sure it's not like Barack Obama's resume as an example, right? Because I mean, that doesn't do any of us any good. So.
Yeah. Just one other comment I would share really for the entire group is, and I've had a number of people tell me this the past couple months, they said that your LinkedIn profile is very key as well. Everybody's looking at your LinkedIn profile, so make sure it's got a professional appearance, make sure it's meaningful, you know, to really your work experience and the value you bring.
Yeah, I would agree. And we find a lot of executives don't even have a LinkedIn profile at all. And it is I mean, again, there might be some people who never care if they get another job or if anybody ever connects with them, and that's fine. But for the rest of us, they are very important. And people are struggling with LinkedIn. I'll admit, I cringe every time I read I'm deeply humbled to accept my recognition for being the single greatest male on the East Coast of the United States that I received from such and such association today, right? And, you know, it's like this, by leading with I'm being humble, I can be the exact opposite of it, right? Like it's a hard place to figure out how on the one hand you share and don't, you know, don't lose the humbleness that is kind of necessity. So it is a great place to talk to people about what you can do, and frankly also to get some help, because sharing your own stuff is always a much trickier pitch than a friend or a colleague who instead gives you accolades or shares on your behalf and dials it up, so you can truly be humble in those moments. But LinkedIn's one worth getting good at practicing. Yeah, Janet, I'm sorry, I saw you literally have your hand up. It's very cool.
I'm sorry, Scott, that was an accident, but I will ask a question since it must be meant to be, as I click buttons on Zoom. And I'm sorry for no video, but in South Carolina, the sound tends to go if you put the video on at the same time. Anyway, this is my question. When you do interact with headhunters, I think that one of the most unpleasant things for folks looking for a job, and it doesn't matter if you've been the CEO of a public company as I have or whatever, is the executive search person is all excited to talk to you. And then if the company, say, stops the search because they just decide they don't want that role, you just don't hear back for month after month after month. What's your view on that? I read somewhere, a headhunter said, well, we don't have time to get back to everybody we interview. Yeah, you do. If you spend an hour interviewing someone, you have 20 seconds to go, just letting you know the company ended the search, just letting you know they moved into information. There are basic ways we can treat each other in the world with kindness and respect, and including your firm. I don't see it happening much, not just with me, but with many, many others I know. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so a couple thoughts. Number one, I have been on the receiving end of exactly what you've described. I made it all the way down to one of the two finalists for a CEO role after months of time and investment and whatever, and then I just never heard anything again, including not hearing back on emails I wrote, right? It's maddening, and it's very common. And I want to be careful around impinging everybody in the profession, because I've dealt with some search professionals who are world class in their service, just do a spectacular job. But it is a broad spectrum, and you see a lot of it. And my complaint about us at Korn Ferry is, in general, I feel like we've come off as jerks. I mean, literally, I've used choicer language internally, but I think we've done a poor job of how we handle the human beings who are in the search process and we're engaging. And the reason is exactly what you gave. I mean, we're overwhelmed or whatever. I think as a firm, and I'll just speak for Korn Ferry in this case, maybe much to its chagrin, but I think we've underinvested in the support technologies and people to make that kind of follow-up more manageable. Right. And so I think it's easy to blame the individuals who haven't done it themselves. And there's always shared culpability, but I also think the other side is, there's some simple things that we could do to make it easier for them to close the loop with folks. So I do think it's a black eye on many of us in the space. Yeah.
Thank you.
Can I ask a follow-up question? So
Sure.
I've been working with Korn Ferry on a particular search. It's been a year, and the first round that I went through the kind of the panel interviews, all of that, and then in October the company decided to put everything on hold. And what's going to happen to the candidate profile inside the Korn Ferry system? Am I going to be like red flagged? Hey, she's being presented to a company, so don't present her again. What's going to happen?
No, so you won't be red flagged. But if somebody else finds you for a position that is a good fit, they will go talk to the person who's managing that search before they reach out to you. So if the search is on pause, you're going to get to talk to somebody, right? If the search is not on pause and you're actively being considered for a role kind of at the end stage, then yeah, they'll probably keep their hands off at that point, so as not to mess up a search that's way down the road. But if you're paused, there'll be a courtesy interaction inside, but you won't be eliminated.
Okay, I find that's not the case. I feel like I was sort of, flagged, and so all the other Korn Ferry searches not really reaching out to me because I in fact, I got some other kind of a JD through other connections that it was conducted by Korn Ferry. So I'm just concerned about if there's anything that I can do to avoid that.
Yeah, no, it's again, it's interesting. The process, the research process that the search professionals go through, right, is really extensive, and from the outside can look like, well, I'd be an equal fit for either role. For whatever reason that the search professional is aware of on the client side and other issues, there are reasons why that might stop, right? So the search professional who has the open position, they want to fill it with the best candidate. So, while they'll be courteous towards their colleague, only so far, right? There's a point at which that doesn't make sense for them either. So, there's, again, like I said, they're not going to disrupt a search that's in the final phase where you're, being considered actively for that role. But if it's paused, you're fair game. But it is interesting. Like, it's, again, from the outside, I never understood how many seemingly fabulously qualified people are being eliminated from even a conversation because of criteria we just don't perceive from the outside, right? And it's again, it's been very eye-opening for me.
Well, let's
let me finish up.
yeah, go ahead, Scott. You have a couple more minutes left, so.
Yeah, so I'll just mention really quickly on this and then hand it back to you, Laura. One of the things I find with executives is they think they're really good interviewers, and you're probably not. Just to be honest, it takes you 5 times as long to answer a question as it should. You feel like you have a lot to share. You're going to want to do it because you have an enormously rich experience and you know how to support and help people. You need to spend time on the likely answers you're going to get, and you need to write them down. And for the ones that are common, you need to be like Manchurian Candidate movie time. When the words come out, you can just crank that phrase, that answer out real fast. Your elevator pitch, you should be able to do in your sleep, right? 30 seconds, 60 seconds, depending upon the situation. That's both because you're going to get a lot more done in your interviews if you can handle the kind of routine questions easily. It also reduces your cognitive load, right? If you're going to end up talking to multiple people in a day about searches and whatever, the less your brain has to work on the layup questions, the better off you're going to be, the more efficient you will be, the more polished you will sound on it. And you need to think through these topics right now. These are ones that are coming up a lot. In some fashion, you're going to be, as an executive, asked to talk about trust. You're going to be asked to talk about how you work through influence, how you're going to speed things up, how you're going to build a more resilient organization. And if you're in the US, which I think pretty much everybody on this call is, you may get a question as pointed as, how will you make this company a more welcoming place for Black employees, right? They will not keep it even at the level of inclusion and diversity. They will be that specific. And you need to be comfortable answering that question. And you need not to sound like you read it off of yesterday's Wall Street Journal, where they talked about a little pop piece on diversity. It needs to be concrete about what your experience has been, where things have gone well, where things have not gone well in the past. So I would say practice these areas. Make sure you're ready to answer them efficiently and comfortably. And with that, Laura, I'll say thank you. I'm sorry if I didn't get to everything that everybody asked, but I'm happy to answer any questions folks have offline or however else I can do it. And there's one of those automated things running on my computer.
Not a problem, Scott. I mean, if you wanted to take a few minutes of questions, that's fine too. I don't have anything really to close it. I'd hate to jump off right now, but if anybody had any questions, you can bring them up with Scott now.
I have a quick question. This is J.R. Sandell. Age, we're not 24 anymore sitting here in front of us, and we need that experience of a lot of years in those high-level roles. But any advice as relates to that? People that are, I've always heard that headhunting firms or search firms, they don't really particularly care for people that are in the older bracket, at least for the main activities of search. Any thoughts on that at all, Scott?
First, it's I wouldn't underestimate how concerned search firms are about doing anything that would look like legal illegal bias. So, you know, if anything, they're going to make sure there is a broad representation around age in a search. So we don't even tolerate at Korn Ferry internal statements that might sound like ageism of any kind. You get jumped on in a heartbeat around it. So, you know, I'm not saying that there may be unconscious biases that people may have. And certainly my experience has been not on the search side, but from hiring companies, that there is bias against people once they've crossed 50. And a lot of it is historically just been they look more expensive. And then secondarily, these days, you know, there is a sense about what do they really understand about what's happening in the digital economy and these kinds of questions. So what I would suggest from what I've seen is to talk about when you're, you know, have a chance about what it is that you're going to do with what I'll refer to as reverse mentoring, right? So you have a lot to bring to the table based on your experience and what you've seen, and that is incredibly valuable, right? The ability to articulate, though, what your ongoing learning is from the 22-year-old who just walked in the door, who simply understands the world of technology and certain aspects of commerce and how people are engaging with each other. If what they hear from you is you see them as a resource in teaching you about opening your eyes and perspectives about things that you wouldn't otherwise, you're going to get a very interesting response out of that, right? You know, the way I talk about it is, when I heard a guy define one time, technology is everything that's been invented since you were born, right? And so it is very much defined by your age, right? And that has become very true as the pace of things has picked up. But what we see is the power of a very seasoned executive who is able to tap into their younger employees who understand TikTok and why anybody would spend this much time on it, is the best of both worlds. So that's where I would, that's what I have found has really worked for more seasoned executives, has been to say, you know, yeah, there's some things that I'm not as facile in, and that's okay. I have these other skills, but here's what I do about, you know, those areas. Here's where I'm going to tap into the employees at our company who are, you know, living with technology in a different way than I do, so that I better understand our market. I understand our customers. I understand how we can enhance what we do as an organization internally and externally.
Great, thank you.
Bill, I'll let you take it from here.
Shall we call it the last words?
Yeah.
Scott, thank you so much for taking time and joining us and sharing great insights. We genuinely appreciate what you're doing and what Korn Ferry is doing as well. And thanks so much for your time and your wisdom and your truth. I think the thing I was really impressed with is you called it the way you see it, which is I think a powerful part of leadership as well. Lori, you want to give everybody what's next?
Sure. Well, next week we've got somebody coming in to talk with us on LinkedIn, and you'll hear about it all through the Mighty Network. I don't need to take your time here, but thank you very much, Scott. Look forward to seeing you all next week, and enjoy what's left of your day and week.
Thank you all.
Thank you.